The MoneroTopia guest segment is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys.
All right, let's bring Alaska up as a special guest. We don't, we just take advantage of this guy. Like he's not special around here.
I feel like I'm taking advantage of you because I get to be the guest on the official Doug is now the face of Monero with his 10,000 subscribers.
No, it's not good, man. It's not good. Biggest sucker in crypto.
You should have found yourself like a more appropriate guest, like, Elon or something, because, I mean, you're like a celebrity now, right? Like you're the big cheese of the Monero movement,
We should be at least like 15K. Give me 15K.
Always
it took so long to get to 10K, man. I don't know. We're definitely like I don't know.
Well, the thing about being a guy in the privacy space is I would be willing to bet like 99% of your viewers are using front ends like NewPipe or whatever.
Yeah, nobody's on Google using YouTube, subscribing.
A bunch of people I work with actually watch this show pretty regularly, and not a single one of them would ever be able to subscribe or anything like that, because how could they? There's no accounts. There's no,
Listen, the much more important metric, right? Like when we have MoneroTopias, we get freedom loving, passionate people to show up, and that's because of this platform, because of the show. There's people out there with 100,000 subscribers. If they were to throw an event for their shitcoin or whatever it is,
MoneroTopia had more guests, like more people showed up for MoneroTopia than showed up for the largest gold conference in the United States. So technically MoneroTopia is already bigger than the gold conferences. So, I mean, most gun shows don't have as many people as MoneroTopia did either. So, I mean, you've already made it. Like, as far as
we made it. We made it, man.
Yeah, but like the face of MoneroTopia is officially you. Like, it's a fact of reality. So
we got to swap you in there, man. You need.
I think a prettier face is definitely ideal. You know what I'm saying? Like so. Well done, sir. You did it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. No, we really did pull in a good crowd though with Marathon, and we pulled in like Bitcoiners, man. We had Shinobi that came, and this was while that Bitcoin event was happening in El Salvador. People were kind of rebelling against that and coming to MoneroTopia. We had some big Bitcoin names that came in, which was I was impressed that word kind of spread to that point.
The one that we just. I mean, imagine how peak clown world we've arrived at, where I find myself advocating for Chris Hayes's view of things, right? Like the MSNBC money guy is like more right about finances than like Donald Trump. It's just like, what is going on? Like he's pointing out like the hypocrisy of the Libertarian Party, while the Libertarian Party itself is just like wearing their MAGA caps and championing state money acquisitions. And I'm just like, what is going on right now? Like, it's truly peak clown world, right? Where like Monero's advocating for more delistings and Bitcoiners are like, we need more government handouts. And I'm just like, there's something just horribly wrong with what's going on right now. Like,
listen, guys, I got to take a little bit of backseat here. And I got to make moves. Tux, can you step up and run this with Alaska, and then bring up viewers?
All right.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind chatting with Alaska a little bit about MoneroTopia before you bring people up, but I'm sure we'll continue down that path.
Yeah. Anyway. Were you here last week, Alaska? Did you get to recap at all?
I only got to be here for a couple of minutes last week, because I've been doing other podcasts to try to spread the word, like especially after it started before MoneroTopia, but a lot of people, like going back a while, actually had been asking me to do a podcast about this or that, usually Monero related. And I'm kind of limited to weekends most of the time because, for one, the time zone that I'm in makes it harder for a lot of people. But then also, I really only have the weekend, right? Like I have kind of a hard cutoff on like making sure I spend time with my kids throughout the week too and stuff.
He's a
So
family man, and he's getting that bread.
yeah, you gotta get the bread, you give it to your family, and you preach the good news, the gospel of FOSS software and Monero. And I did a show about like how Christianity and Monero kind of line up. That was interesting because it's something that I personally have been passionate about for a while, but I try not to bring it into people that might not, be super interested in it. But a gentleman from the Christian world who's also a Monero advocate, we did a whole thing on the idea of sound money principles in the Bible.
Yeah, who was that with again? I saw
Monero Master.
Monero Master. Yeah.
The guy is absolutely, for one, he's really good at like editing and making his videos pretty and all that stuff. He's the other thing is like he clearly put a lot of time into doing his homework ahead of the interview, and then did even more afterwards. And it's very clean. And one of the things about it, for one, if you are a Christian, I really hope that you will listen to it. But if you're not a Christian, I strongly encourage people to familiarize themselves with the arguments, because the reality is there's more of a compelling argument for Christians to get out of fiat and into Monero than there is for even like some of the basic libertarian philosophies and all of that. There are commandments in the Bible that specifically tell you not to get involved in usury, that specifically tell you to only use sound money. And to a point, I would argue that Monero is even better than gold as far as adhering to those principles. But we cover a lot of other things too, like some things in Proverbs about inheritance and so on. And even if you're not in this for the Christian principles, having it available to you to share with people who are Christians would go a really long way with adoption. And this guy is just like criminally underfollowed, right? Like he's an incredible journalist. He really does his homework. He puts the time in. And the thing is like he's not getting the kind of traction that I think he way beyond deserves, right? And then I did another one with this the Matt and Austin podcast before MoneroTopia started, and one of the reasons why I had apologized for my lateness, even though I try to be here every week, I just did one with Gabriel Custodiet of the Watchman Privacy podcast. So I've been just trying to kind of get the message out there. And I worry a lot about how Monero is starting to do that thing that Bitcoin did, where it's crypto anarchists and cypherpunks selling to other crypto anarchists and cypherpunks. And the goal is to get it to the people, which is one of the reasons why like Ray Youssef, for example, I think is an absolute Chad, right? Because he's way more obsessed with what we should be doing, which is getting Monero into the hands of the people and teaching them how to. And by the way, like in my mind, you have solidified yourself as a legend forever, right? Because even in spite of the fact that this like MoneroTopia is basically work for you, right? And you were already putting in these crazy long hours. And guys, he was sick as a dog too. Like, and he just kept showing up. And
oh yeah, dude, I got sick. It wasn't, I know some other people that got worse than me. They got like food poisoning. It wasn't that bad, but yeah.
Well, naturally you're going to say that because you're a humble man, but people like Tux was out there helping people use their cake wallets, finding bugs, bringing them to the right attention of the right people, like just fighting tooth and nail every single day to try to find a way, all while trying to put together like his presentation and all of this other like highly technical things. So And just so you know, you can donate at tux.pizza to the man himself. He does accept Monero. I don't know if he still has the wallet because the plane, some bags got lost. He might, but either way, you know, you can donate to tux.pizza to further support his crusade against financial tyranny. But yeah,
I'll take this opportunity to shill the .xmr domains.
Mhm.
You can buy on Unstoppable Domains. Cake. We have we had some communication with Unstoppable, and we were able to get them to start selling .xmr. They start very cheap. You buy it once, you own it forever. The way it should be.
And I mean, just look at this guy. Like, I'm trying to shill his donation, and he immediately pivots to, you know.
Well, I'll wrap around to your point is that you can add your XMR address to that XMR domain. You can put it in Cake Wallet. So you can type in, I have tux.xmr.
Nice.
And that'll pull up an address, basically. And you can buy one yourself and do the same thing. It's very great.
Yeah, it was the thing about the conference that was really eye-opening to me is like I had gone to Bitcoin conferences back when I was much more obsessed with my personal privacy and so on. And like everything would be done on Lightning, or, you know, it was like there were people who were there for Bitcoin that were only accepting fiat and stuff like that. And meanwhile, like just straight up volunteers, right? Like, you know, shout out to Drunk Dial Me, for example. I mean, you know, the power lifter himself, right? You know, like actively trying to help vendors, you know, set up their first wallets, and, you know, people donating like the first XMR payment to the vendors so they had some and got to try it and all this other stuff. But I had kind of touched on it before, and I won't rehash the whole thing, but that was the first crypto conference, which I've been to many. MoneroTopia just generally is the only crypto conference that I've ever seen where people were showing up completely green to the entire crypto ecosystem. And one lady I had pointed out before didn't even know how to use email, had never been using a smartphone, and flew from Fairbanks, Alaska to learn how to use Monero at the conference. It wasn't like, I'm here for the gains, I'm here for the price pump, blah, blah, blah. It was, I'm here for the freedom. Show me how to use this freedom tech. You just don't see that anywhere else, right? And that's why, like, with the limited time that I have available to me, this is the conference that I go to, right? Because this is the one that's fighting the freedom cause right now, and like having results and getting vendors on board and taking it to places that need it the most, right? Like Mexico is a prime example of a place that would benefit greatly from using Monero. And not only that, but the financial boot is already on their throats, as we saw from, you know, the very kosher election of the last president. So, like,
yeah, and I think the important aspect of that too is that a lot of the, I guess what you would consider more second and third world countries, they recognize the need for something like Monero even better than people from the United States do, because we just have it better in general, even though we have same corruption issues. It's just seen more because of the poverty in some of the countries like Mexico. And so they're more willing to get on board with that quicker. Without you having to convince them why it matters. They already understand to a higher degree why something like that matters.
And, you know, if MoneroTopia, I mean, yes, there's a Bitcoin conference in El Salvador right now, or was one or whatever, but the thing is like MoneroTopia is the one that's willing to go to these places and make these things happen. And it's the conference is made up of the people, and everybody who's there, like, even though you could probably have a better time at MoneroTopia than literally anywhere else, right? Like the world is your oyster. You can eat whatever you want. You can, you know, participate in whatever illicit activities you may want. And yet people would show up there, and their first question is, how can I help? Like, can I volunteer in any way? And then the other thing is that I would leave, like, let's say a Bitcoin conference or whatever. And in theory, it was like, okay, we can talk to each other. Let's stay in touch. But with MoneroTopia, like almost everybody has tried to stay in touch. And it's honestly like the upper limit of how many people you can stay in touch with is where we're at, people talking about coming to visit me here, like on the off time or whatever. Like people, they're staying in touch to build a community, right? And people that I didn't know before. Like, in fact, yesterday I had a meeting about like certain vendors of agriculture products, and I don't know how much they want to share, but working on a system where they can accept Monero, but their interest isn't accepting Monero and then getting out of it. Their interest is accepting Monero and then keeping the circulating economy going. Like, these are things that you just don't hear other places. Like, people in this culture, people in this fight, they want the freedom. Like, it's a totally different vibe. It's a totally different world. And you could see it also. I was doing a lot with on and off ramp at the conference, and each time people wanted out less and less and less. They were keeping more Monero than they did the previous day. They were, they were using it too, and the fact that the devs are there, and I would consider you like a huge part of just the general dev team of Monero, right? Like trying to make wallet software work for the people who need it the most, right? The devs, even after like a 15-hour day of just working their asses off, going and looking at like, okay, well, what's going on with this person, and like in the rest of the world of software, and it was the case in Monero not that long ago, but all of a sudden, it's no longer this like tech elitist, the tech bro mentality of it's broken because you're using it wrong. The devs are having the humility to say it's broken because they want to use it this way and we're not making it possible for them, right? Which is how it's supposed to be. The user is never the bug, right? The software should allow the user to do what they want to do, or there should be a way that other software is allowing them to do what they want to do.
Unless they don't save their seed, then I'm sorry, we can't help.
Yeah, well, I mean, like there has to be like a cutoff, of course, like the underlying design of the crypto itself, like a certain level of compliance to the existing ecosystem has to be attained, or do you even really want to use Monero, right? But
yeah, but even then, we're going to make improvements to that process as well. Help.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing, right? It's where it's like there has to be a way where like the devs are at least meeting in the middle, or they're coming up with some kind of solution to and I don't know if he wants me to share his name here, but one particular developer of a particular wallet was highly receptive to this conversation, which is a huge anomaly, right? Where devs are just too proud of the work that they've done to admit that the usability of their software is a bug, right? Or another one that I found was like there were techniques and utility available in a wallet that nobody even knew existed, which is another layer, which it's like Monero, the marketing side of Monero. If I, as like, I mean, I'm kind of like up there with Doug, right? Where it's like, I'm like as close to a power user as the Monero community has, right? I'm trying to use it every day. I'm trying to onboard people every day. If even I don't know like more convenient ways to share wallet information and stuff, because I just literally don't even know it exists. If the devs are going to go through all the trouble of making this unbelievably convenient way for me to use like Monero wallet links and so on, and then I never even hear about it, even though I'm using it every day, like we have a marketing problem with the fact that we have this incredible tech and this incredible usability that's available to people that even the power users don't know exists, right? Like BirdPay is amazing, right? And if it weren't for people like you and Vic even just going out there and like using it and demonstrating it and like being loud, like, hey, this is something that you can do with Cake Wallet on Twitter, right? I certainly wouldn't know about it. I mean, I don't use Twitter and I know about it thanks to you guys, but like we have to find a way to share with each other what is possible now. You know, like there's so many people who have no idea what's possible now. And that was kind of one of the last interviews that I just did was about, which is like, okay, if I want to get out of the banking system, right? For those of you who don't know, I was debanked like forever ago. And people asking me like, okay, well, if I'm not in the banking system, how do I this, that, and the other? You know, simple luxuries that we have now that I didn't have back then, right? Like coin cards, right? I mean, they're amazing. And Cake Wallet has a bunch of stuff like that built right into it. Like you want to use Monero to buy whatever right here, right now at this place, you can, right? And yet, like, where would you go to find an online tutorial? Where would you go to? And this is one of the places where the listening audience, we need you to step up. Okay. Like if you think you could make a video on this is how I use my Cake Wallet to buy a gift card, or this is how I like, people need to make those easy to follow video tutorials that allow a person. I mean, you can't just leave it up to Tux, you know what I'm saying? Like, which there are some great tutorials done by Tux, by the way. But it's like, do you want them working on the wallet or do you want them teaching guys how to use it, right? Like, if you want them working on the wallet, then that means you need to start teaching people how to use it. Like, you can't.
Yeah, I kind of realized the same thing after doing the because I had 2 graffiti workshops while I'm there, and you can show stuff to people like in person there, and that's very helpful because they can ask questions as you're doing something. But everyone was asking me, "Do you have a video?" Right? Because they want to be able to replicate this at home, go back. And so, yeah, it's important that I realize now even more, like I knew that videos were great, but even more so now, it's important to have very clear step-by-step instructions. Like written out is good, but also videos, I think, do a better job at promoting it as well, because a video is something that's easy to watch. Be like, oh yeah, just watch this video. So yeah, that's something we'll definitely try doing more for Cake going forward. We have some videos. There's some videos that have me in it that I've done on the Cake Wallet channel for various stuff. But we'll have to do more going forward. Some of them are out of date. And I'm basically redoing all the documentation for Cake Wallet right now that we have on the guides website. I'm redoing that to update it, make it better, more clear, hopefully more organized, make it easier for people to get into it. But yeah, that's a really good point, is that a lot of people, they want it, they want access to it. They just need somebody who knows how it works, and it's easy for them to show it, and they just need to be able to see how it's done and how to use it.
There are people who love Monero that would love to see the community grow that are not the socialites. I mean, think about just the nature of Monero in general. Like, we're talking about private people, right? And there are a lot of people who are private for reasons of like social aloofness too, right? And if you want to turn that guy into a marketing expert, you have to provide him with materials that this person can share with their friends. They don't want to sit there and awkwardly teach people how to use their whatever, right? They want to be able to, this works for me. It works really well. Here's a video of a guy explaining it better than I could. And once again, I know that there's people who listen to the show every day that have it in them to be able to do that. Pick one thing, make the video. And in fact, you could just be the guy recording it and then have a, like a camera watching your phone or whatever. And then you could even pass all of that over to an editor. Maybe there's an editor chat out there that, will handle it from there. But collect with your fellow Monero colleagues, get it out there and watch adoption explode, right? And the best time, like if we had these videos ready to go right now, then Monero price pumps 20-30%. People are starting to look for it. The first thing they're going to see is like, okay, well, how do I get some? How do I use it? Where's the XMR Bazaar video on this is how you can get, no KYC Monero? Like, go sell your whatever. I loved the Swoops has been all over it since the conference, right? Where going to thrift stores, buying up stuff in thrift stores, and then putting it on xmrbazaar.com.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because the thing is like thrift stores are a highly localized thing. This is the perfect price arbitrage thing, because you buy a fancy suit for $20-$30 at a thrift store, and then other people would value that much higher, right? $100, $150. And you're not going to have all of the sizes unless a bunch of people are doing it, right? All over the country. And all of a sudden you're creating this beautiful ecosystem of, I can buy something from a thrift store halfway around the world and get it shipped to me. It adds a lot of value to my life. It adds a lot of value to the person who's doing the shopping. They can get their hands on some Monero without getting into all of these KYC exchanges and all that trash. And you're strengthening the circular economy. This is like easily the most important place for us to be focusing, is on these places where it's immediately a circular economy, right? I'm providing a service, I'm providing a product, you're providing me with Monero. I get in, you get the value that you hope to get out of your Monero. And then on the other side, like, everybody talks about farmers markets or vendors or whatever. And that's true. But if vendors are going to start carrying this stuff, then that means that there has to be the guy who will have a meeting with such and such vendor and be like, yes, you should take XMR for these reasons. And then taking the time to show them how they can take XMR and where they can post it, where people who want to use Monero would be able to find it, right? There has to be these men and women in the middle that are closing that gap between the person who would be interested in selling and the person who would be interested in using their Monero. And we can all do that, and it can't just be Tux. We need everybody to do their part every day.
Although I want to do more.
And you should.
I will be. Yeah, I should. Exactly. And I do have an in-depth Graphene OS series I'm working on. But I mean, that's the thing too, is that, we've got some videos for stuff here and there. Don't be discouraged if there's videos for specific things that already exist. I mean, the more people, there's a lot of talented people, and the more people that are creating high quality content about Monero, privacy, whatever, the more traction it'll get. And stuff gets out of date sometimes. So sometimes it's nice to refresh something. And the more people that do it, the more visibility it will get.
Yeah, I mean, what would we do without the people who are already doing it? How would the person listening have even heard about Monero if somebody didn't do it?
Exactly. I would have never found out about Monero if it wasn't for people like Seth doing his podcast, and then Doug, of course, doing MoneroTopia and Monero Talk show, because that's kind of how I got into Monero and learned a lot about it, is just by listening to these podcasts while working at the time when I had a more of a manual labor job. We got a couple super chats here. Private one tipped $1. I second Alaskanon. Doug has many more followers, except True Monero Bros banned YouTube, so you don't see the true numbers. It is a very good point. And if there's another platform that you guys want to maybe see us stream on more prominently, let us know. It's harder because it might not be integrated with StreamYard, but we can still do custom stream outputs. So let us know. Fiat Demise tipped 50 cents. Adam Curry, dude, Podcast 2.0 guys. Yeah. No Agenda was a show I listened a ton to, and I was working as well. It's a great show. They're serious about sending value with Monero in addition to Lightning. Have they talked about, episode 2 or 3 has multiple Monero mentions. Interesting. Would be awesome to start wallet integration with the podcast app. I hadn't ever turned up talk about Monero. That's very interesting. That's a big deal. There's something that could definitely happen there. Maybe they'd be interested in XMR chat, but with a version that works better for podcasting with audio. And Neil has tipped $1.23. Tutorials are there to make it easier for people to understand the why and what and the how. First goal is to show that it is possible. Second goal is to convey the message more efficiently. Simplify as much as you can. Lower the skill access barrier. Yep, totally.
And there's all of these target audiences that are being ignored. So with Monero, we've done a decent job of trying to make it like available to the unbanked, right? But I would point out that we as a community could do so much better, like so much better. So for example, anytime there's like a news story or whatever on this person's bank account being closed, or you could start with just a comment in, you know, some comment field or whatever. If you set up a Monero wallet, I'll donate to it, or something, you know, like where it's like the idea of calling the bluff, right? Where when tyrants try to exercise all of this additional authority, we made huge progress with the trucker protest, right? Rode on the coattails of people saying, "Oh, should have used Bitcoin," and I was like, "No, should have used Monero," right? Now, I as a guy who works in the trucking industry, I was a lot closer to be able to handle this stuff, right? But the people who did adopt Monero at the Canadian trucker protest, they stayed in Monero, right? The people who tried to do it with Bitcoin, a lot of people had a cold reality check when it came to what happens when you use a transparent blockchain to resist the banks and the government, you know. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin didn't do exactly what it's designed to do. It absolutely did. But as predicted, they went after the accounts, they went after the exchanges, they went after the people. They don't have to go after the Bitcoin to win that fight. And that's our chance to say, look at what privacy can do for you, right? And there's an example of this kind of stuff every single day. And it, you know, the better we are at riding these clown world moments, I guess you could say, where it's like, this person couldn't pay their mortgage because the bank wouldn't accept it or whatever, right? That's your chance to be like, there's other solutions that already exist. Why do we even comply with these people? Burn it to the ground and switch to Monero, right? Like that's our chance to, you know, what do they call it? The zeitgeist, right? That's our chance to hit the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, and I mean, it could only really go up from here. And Monero at this point in time, it seems like it's pretty solidified as being one of the, maybe not big players, but like well-known players in crypto. And it's kind of kept that even with its price suppression, even though it hasn't gone to the moon, which is good. That shows that people are valuing it and using it for its utility, and they're realizing that they actually, surprise, you actually need privacy in a currency. You don't want to have everything just on a public ledger for everyone else to see.
Mm-hmm. And all of this wishful thinking about like, well, if the government uses Bitcoin, blah blah blah, it's like, because clearly the problem is we need to catch the government being criminals more, right? It's like there's not massive body of evidence that already exists, right? Like this, I mean, like these people need to lay off the crack pipe, you know? It's like the government doesn't care when you catch them in criminal activity because they already control the money supply. You take away control of the money supply, you know, and once again, like who would have thought, of all people, Chris Hayes is like the Monero champion all of a sudden, because he's the only one saying like, where are your libertarian principles now? You know, it's like, here we are, right? Like it's full circle. Like all of the nerds got their seat at the cool kids table, and so they can't wait to lick that government boot. I mean, it is like the most polished boot ever at this point. So
Yeah. Crypto is, it's kind of crazy, and it's cool, but it's also sad to ultimately see what's kind of, it's been like co-opted sort of as an industry into.
I for one embrace our new clown world reality. I think it's great, right? What a time to be alive, right? And it's like we all have the chance to be heroes right now. Not every generation gets this huge number of opportunities to stand against tyranny and point out that the emperor has no clothes, build something better, build something different. you know, in like the 1970s, if you would have been trying to set up a parallel economy in the United States, people would have been like, blah, 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 rah, rah, America, freedom, this and that, and whatever. Like they would have never even accepted the fact that, you know, the Orwellian nightmare was fully entrenching itself right before their very eyes. And now it's like, you know, even our lizard people overlords are more than happy to just slap you in the face with what kind of tyrants they're willing to be. You know, so like you don't have to go through all the process of like proving that there's this corruption and this wickedness going on in the world. Like even grandma down the street doesn't trust her bank anymore. Like what a chance to make a difference. There's never been a better chance to make a difference. And so when y'all get to meet with Jesus and tell him what you did with your life, you have no excuse. You know what I'm saying? Like you had every chance to do the right thing and make a difference and improve the world around you. I should probably stop ranting because I don't want to hog the viewers on stage part of the thing, but like,
No, I agree though. I agree. Yeah, usability, getting the word out there, like doing outreach tutorials. And as people, I think as time goes on, like even in the US, people are waking up and realizing, oh shit, you know, we actually need something that's like, and the government actually does bad stuff. Whoa, surprise. You know, people are starting to slowly finally realize what's going on. And that they need sovereignty over their money. They need financial privacy.
There was one other thing that Doug had said about like, you know, the utility of a higher Monero price that I almost forgot to say that I wanted to say right away, which was the higher the price of Monero goes, the more expensive a 51% attack becomes for the handful of people that could theoretically pull it off. That's another thing that people need to recognize about the price of Monero.
That's a very good point.
And it really doesn't have to go up by much because it's exponentially more difficult to pull off with each tiny move in the price. And I just want to remind people, it's already like a tiny, tiny number of organizations that could even do it, and they would have to put a lot of effort into it. But, you know, if you see a price for Monero at like 500, 600, 800 USD, now even the people who could theoretically pull it off, which is an ever smaller pool of people, so you know who to blame, right? It becomes ever increasingly difficult for them to actually pull it off. And then the other thing, I mean, in theory, you know, you could also walk back a few blocks or whatever. Like the community could easily mitigate a lot of the damage of the attack. But that said, ideally, it can't even happen. And so the higher the price, the better it is. The higher the price, the more novel ways of mining Monero that people start to exploit, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. It also solidifies the security of the hash rate, because that same 0.6 XMR reward, well, suddenly that's worth 2-3 times what it was before. Suddenly the hash rate's going to go up a lot, and there's going to be a lot more people who are participating in mining because it's actually profitable now. The cost of mining is more than making up for the electricity cost in more places.
And, you know, I just want to point out the Nodo thing again, right? Where, I mean, where the Nodo is right now, it's definitely like there's still kind of a tech gap for being able to use it properly. I got to play with it at MoneroTopia. It's amazing. But the thing is those who are technically proficient should definitely be jumping on as quickly as possible. But even for those who are not technically proficient, for one, there's still value to be gleaned from it. But more important than ever is this idea of more open source, right? So the software level, the FOSS community has pretty much licked that one, right? Like switching to Linux is super easy. Using a graphene phone, I mean, we are no longer in the Pine phone days, people. Like now getting your hands on a graphene phone, we still have a lot of ground to cover, right? And then it's still a technical process to make it a graphene phone. So there's that too. But once you have a graphene phone, using it is just mind-blowingly easy, right? Like it's awesome. So on the like all the way to the like the operating system level, FOSS software is winning, but hardware is still a big gap in the armor of freedom. And what is happening with the Nodo, this is the thing that excites me even more than the implications for Monero, right? Because Monero people, a lot of them can already spin up a node on all kinds of stuff, right? And the utility there is putting a node in the hands of somebody who doesn't know about like the technical aspect of running a node, right? But way more important than that, we see once again the Monero community on the absolute bleeding edge of putting more FOSS hardware, right? Like into the hands of an ever decreasing scale of technical proficiency. And by the way, I've said this before, but on an absolute shoestring budget, right? Like other people who have tried this have spent millions and millions and millions more and failed. And I mean, let's be honest, 4 guys, right? And I mean, Doug was more like a finance or cheerleader kind of guy. I mean, we're honestly talking about 2 guys working with practically nothing have managed to accomplish on a far smaller budget what people with millions of dollars couldn't do, right? I mean, on slightly more complicated projects, but the point still stands, right? You can get a piece of hardware that is using the highest level of principles that you can theoretically do right now to put open source hardware into the hands of the normie to be used for financial privacy. Like this is a huge step in the direction that we as a people want to be in, right? So even if you don't plan on using one of these things, like if you're a wealthy individual, buy one and send it to a guy who has technical savvy, right? Or because the thing is this is a place where you can put, relatively speaking, not very much money. You can actually drive the open source hardware movement way ahead of where it is right now to do something that actually matters right now. And then that opens the door for those same guys to maybe build a team of guys doing it and focus on even bigger projects like miners and so on. The world is our oyster if this project is successful. Okay. And so far it has been quite successful, especially considering what he launched it like 9 months ago or something like that. But I mean, even like Google, when they were trying to build a phone, it took them like 4 years to put one out, you know?
Yeah, Monero is pretty cool project, and what's cool about it is how custom it is. They didn't just go and use some existing mini PC design. They have a very it's quite a custom design that they had to specifically get manufactured, which is cool. Now I think it's using a similar processor to what's in the
Pies.
like the Pine 64. It's a bit more powerful. It's a lot more powerful than the Raspberry Pi actually. But the overall design of the board, to my understanding, is custom. And the rest of the device, it's been customized, so it's got specific all the parts together is specific to the Nodo. With the specs and everything.
If we don't do this, you guys, like the reality is this is the best path that I see forward for kicking down the door of the hardware oligopoly. Okay, like, and I don't see any other project trying to balance those two things quite as effectively, which is getting good hardware into the hands of the people, but sticking to your ethics and your principles. And this, you'll never know, right? Like, so something like the Nodo, if it were to take off, might, I mean, maybe somebody like B-Link or whatever is going to take a note of this. Like, here's something similar to a mini PC that's using better ethics, right? Or, like we have out there, the Nova Customs of the world, or the the System 76 people out there, and they're trying really hard. But the other question that I have for those guys, respectfully, and thank you for what you do, but the question I have for those guys is, why are you just trying to do what other guys are doing, but make it like open source, right? And one of the reasons why I really like, for example, the framework direction is they're trying to capitalize on something that the other guys are not doing, making your own PC, like custom designs, reusability, swappable batteries, stuff like that. And the funny thing is now phones are going to have to use things like, swappable batteries and standard IO and all of that stuff. But we should be leading that stuff, right? Like the freedom movement should be ahead of this kind of thing. We should be offering people what they can't get in other places. Capture market share by being the only one in the market and using ethical principles the entire way. And, one thing that I absolutely love about the way Vic does business, right? When somebody points out a problem with, for example, Cake Wallet, the guy doesn't get on the defensive and be like, I'm the only guy out there, blah, 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 this and that. He listens, he responds, and he's like, let me see what we can do about that, right? Like, I hope that anyone else trying to pioneer something or make something that they themselves want will then take that feedback, because the tech world, like when they criticize hard, right? I mean, they've got some teeth, like they have very mean things to say sometimes or whatever. And if you're one of those guys, maybe come off it a little bit, don't be so hostile when you're pointing out the flaws of something. Maybe understand what it takes to get as far as some of these guys have, and show a little gratitude while you're, flaming them on the internet or whatever. But what we could all learn from a case study like Vic at Cake Wallet is see through the hostility and listen to the substance of the complaint or the argument or whatever it is, and try to grow as a company and as a person into fixing those problems, no matter how the person said it, right? Because passionate people are often hostile people. Those passionate people may become your strongest advocates later on, so treat them with respect that maybe at that particular moment in time they don't even deserve, and watch the relationships grow, watch the trust get built, because we all want a high trust society in the end, right? If somebody's making a good point, don't dismiss it because they're hostile. Maybe they're a little jaded. I don't know. Maybe their dog died this morning. You don't know why they're so angry. Like listen to the substance of the argument and act on it. And then we can all go forward much more effectively as a community.
Yeah. Got a couple super chats here. Hole Puncher tip 25 cents. What is a good NAT VPS service? Payable next hour. Please put the link in the comment section. Which comment section? The private one or the YouTube one? I think if I know what you're asking for is a VPN that lets you escape being natted. Incognet.io. They have you can buy VPSs from them to do your own WireGuard proxy, or you can buy a VPN directly that's WireGuard, and they accept Monero. They're pretty good for that. Neela's tipped $1.23 to all open hardware manufacturers. Free advertising on my UpSec blog if you make open hardware laptops. Clear lack of open hardware in the privacy market. This is true. A lot of these companies that offer laptops that come with Linux, like System 76 and Nova Custom, they do rebranded Tongfang computers, which tend to be lower quality compared to something like Framework, where they make their own in-house design, which is a lot hard to do, costs a lot more money, but the end product is much better. Open hardware, CPUs in particular. Oh, that's even more specific. It's one of the main missing pieces I want to fit in my blog. Good to know. Thanks, Neelist. Drunk Dial tipped $1. Should stream MoneroTopia on Rumble and maybe Odyssey and flood the comment section of shows like Luke Rudkowski's The Best Political Podcast and Liberty Lockdown with topical solutions. They just praised Monero a few days ago. Oh, that's cool to know. Interesting to know. Monero is gaining even more traction with these libertarian type podcasters. I'll look into seeing if we can stream to Rumble and Odyssey as well if people like those platforms better. So it's not just limited to ones like YouTube and Twitch right now. Thanks. Thanks,
Can I just say, for the bag holders of Monero who have been patiently waiting for people to appreciate, like on a historical scale, I mean, you are so early, you know, like you are so early, and that doesn't justify being angry or impatient, right? So it often takes people a lot longer to adopt a clearly better technology than you may appreciate, right? Because when you're on the bleeding edge, when you're on the avant-garde, when you're early to something like this, it's easy to get jaded, right? Don't become that guy that's just like flaming everybody on Twitter or whatever, like, you're a blah, blah, blah retard for not using Monero for this and that and whatever. Just a simple, have you considered Monero?
Even if you're correct.
Yeah, even if you're correct, gentle. And I'm not like famous for how gentle I am, so I'm speaking to myself as well, right? Like I can be a very aggressive individual sometimes. I'm working on it. I really am. I'm sorry for those of you who endure my my bust out the guillotines rants all the time, right? Yeah, Alaskanon is very gentle. Thanks. You just tell my wife that. She needs to know that there are those out there who believe that I can be gentle. But just know that being early is a good thing, and be glad you're early and be patient. Okay, because now with the Luke Radowskis, or however you say his name, coming into the world, I mean, hold on tight. Your bags very well may pump, you know? So, and make sure you're loading up with what you can afford. I mean, follow Body's advice too. Like, don't go all in on Monero or anything like that. I mean, be smart with your money. I mean, there's a reason, you know, he donates his precious time every week to making sure that you don't do something stupid, you know? But like keep your bags growing slowly over time, and you know, you very well may find one day, I don't know, like Elon Musk telling everybody like, we need privacy, XMR, and then all the Dogecoiners move their $1 trillion market cap over here or something. Who knows?
Yeah. Don't buy Monero, or Monero. Don't sell Monero, buy stuff. I agree. And that's the thing too. Monero is the crypto of spending. It's the one I've used the most to actually purchase stuff online. And I think that will remain the core focus, is the usage, even as the price goes up. Thank you so much, Alaskanon, for filling in our guest segment. You are an absolute legend, sir. You are awesome. You do some awesome work, and you are very good at reaching people, and helping them understand why something like this matters, helping onboard them. And I got to see that in action at MoneroTopia. And you yourself, some people probably didn't know, but Alaskanon had a big part in helping with MoneroTopia behind the scenes. So thank you very much for doing that.